Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I will tell you what, whether you hate it, whether you adore it, you cannot ignore it when it comes to sales. Yes, we're all going to have to sell in all of our businesses, and that's why we've gone out and found someone who not only loves sales and loves training other people on sales and understands what it takes to grow a business and really deeply serve people and do it through, yes, selling. We can't avoid that, but we've got someone who is an incredible entrepreneur. I already love this guy's energy, and I'm excited for all of us to learn from him today. So let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Sabin. Zach is a master trainer and leader with over 15 years in the insurance and financial services industry. Known for transforming agents into top producers, he's trained thousands to achieve breakthrough results. Starting as a sales agent himself, Zach built one of Michigan's top-ranked agencies before moving into leadership, where he led his territory to number one in the market in a national top 30 ranking. He's got a bunch of certifications and designations that I'll let him tell you all about, but Zach specializes in building scalable businesses, high-performing teams, and a culture of excellence. And what I really appreciate, all the stuff that I found when I looked up Zach and his work and his business, is that this is someone who has a very strong bias towards action. We are all going to be pushed to our limits. It's going to be uncomfortable at times today, but I'm super excited. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Zach Sabin. All right, Zach, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. Super excited to be here and excited to, talk to your audience a little bit about how to grow and scale through sales.
Heck yes. Zach, it's not necessarily a topic that they're going to want to hear about, but we're definitely going to put it on them today. But before we get there, take us beyond the bio. Who's Zach? How did you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I kind of stumbled into sales. I tell people all the time it was kind of the best thing that ever happened to me. I went to school to be a teacher. I love coaching and teaching, obviously, but I wanted to coach sports, and I wanted to be a high school teacher. And I ended up working in retail and decided I didn't want to give up my full-time job to go back and pay full tuition to be an unpaid student teacher. And so I ended up in retail management, and then by chance found my first sales role and was attracted to it purely for the fact that I was going to be paid based off of my performance. As a former athlete, college athlete, it motivated me to know that I was going to be paid based off of how well I did my job and how much time I was willing to put into learning the craft and becoming really great at helping people. And so that was kind of what motivated me to get into it, and just kind of fell in love with the business. And I've been in insurance. It'll be 16 years in May. It's hard to believe it, but it's gone fast. And just have a passion for watching others succeed in achieving their goals by helping other people. And that's really what sales is. Sales is not the old school mindset that a lot of people have. You're not doing something to someone. You're doing something for someone. And that's why I love it. If you're coaching and teaching in the right way, you're having a huge impact on those that you serve. And that's what I try to do every day.
Yeah, I love that overview, Zach. And I will tell you this, I constantly remind listeners that when we have amazing guests on, such as yourself, you are not just a subject matter expert, but you are one of us. You are a fellow entrepreneur. So I'd love for you to talk to us about that transition into launching your own company, Ignite Agency Training. Walk us through the beginning days of that.
Yeah, it was one of the hardest but best decisions that I ever made. I had a very fulfilling role in the corporate world before leaving, and I'm somebody that always wants to live with no regrets. I don't want to not bet on myself. And so I contemplated starting the company for a long time. And finally it got to a point where I knew if I didn't take action today, if I don't do this now, I never will. I would have kept working in my role. I had a great group of agents that I was basically doing business consulting with. And I decided to take the leap of faith, to bet on myself. And I've done that multiple times. When I left my retail job to go into a full commission sales role, It was a leap of faith. When I left my team member role to open an agency and be a business owner for the first time as an agency owner, it was a leap of faith. When I left that to move into the corporate world, it was a leap of faith. And I always trust that if I work hard and I focus on helping those that I'm serving get what they want, I'll get what I want tenfold. So I decided to resign and launch this virtual on-demand interactive training system for insurance agents back in October of 2023. And it has been a wild ride. It has been a journey, and it is very different than running an insurance agency. There is so much to get your arms around. Being an insurance agency owner is not easy, but this has been one of the most challenging yet rewarding things that I've ever done, and I'm so glad that I made the decision to do it.
Yes, I am also glad as well, Zach, because just having seen the content that you put into the world and the way that you show up, not only is your messaging very uplifting and encouraging, and like I said in the intro, it has a strong bias to action. Even just talking with you here today, it makes me want to do the work, makes me want to put those reps in. But what I really appreciate, Zach, is the fact that you openly acknowledge, sales is such an important thing. You said it's not something we do to people, it's something we do for them. Let's start there. Let's reframe the traditional old school way of viewing sales, which I don't think we can have this conversation without throwing used car salesmen under the bus. That's like the old cliche, but walk us through your view on sales and the new way that we really need to be embracing it as part of our growth journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Sales is about change and helping customers solve a problem. I tell the people that I work with all the time, your job as a sales professional isn't to sell a product. It's to find the customer's problem that you're best served to help them with, and then walk them through a process of asking really good questions so that they start to self-discover that there might be potential concerns. In the insurance world specifically, we're selling non-tangible products. We're selling things that nobody ever wants to use. But when they do, they're glad they have it if it's done for the right reason. And so I use something that I've kind of dubbed emotional insight questioning, where we are trying to tie into the emotion that we know drives decision making, and then help the customer finalize the decision using the logic that we have the right solution to help them solve the problem that is presented to us based off of the conversations that we're having with them. It's not a one size fits all approach. It's not this policy is the best for you or that policy is the best for you. It's what are some of the consequences or potential impacts to you if something happens and this problem isn't solved? What does that look like? And so being very consultative and asking really good questions, and then being comfortable sitting and listening and being empathetic and actively paying attention to what the customer has to say. A lot of times, sales professionals, they ask questions with the intent to respond, not with the actual intent to listen. And I coach that all the time. You have 2 ears, 1 mouth. You need to use them accordingly. And so I kind of talk about, if you're recording yourself and listening back to your sales conversations, and you're talking more than 30%, 40% of the time, you're probably not very successful, because that means the customer's not getting their voice in the room enough. They're not thinking out loud. They don't view you as a trusted partner, right? They're surface level. They're not giving you the information that you need to help them. And so that's kind of the philosophy that I have. We focus on asking great questions throughout the process. We don't push people. We don't try to force people into conversations that they don't want to have. It's about what is in the best interest of the customer. In the insurance world, I've kind of dubbed this the insurance professionals manifesto. And it goes like this. Our role as insurance professionals is to help every customer that we get to interact with understand all of the risks they face and all of the options that we have to protect themselves, so that they can make an informed decision about how we can help them and whether they want to do business with us or not, because that's whose choice it is. It's the customers. And unfortunately, in the insurance industry, there's a lot of conversation about price. And a lot of people are just trying to save people money, and that leaves the customer in a situation where if there's a bad situation, they're going to have to pay a lot of money out of pocket. And that's just not something that I've ever wanted, and something I don't want to teach the people that trust me to help them get better.
Yeah, Zach, I'll tell you what, obviously in close to 1,100 episodes, we've talked about sales in so many different capacities before, but I've never heard someone talk about questions and questioning in the way that you just did. You talked about leading someone to a process of self-discovery about their needs. And I think that's such a brilliant approach, even on the surface level, because I can imagine that if you tell me that I need something, okay, cool, you can rationalize and logic it to me, especially as an analyst by nature, you can definitely rationalize with me. However, if I can come to that conclusion, then I trust you. And now I'm just looking for you to be the provider of that solution. Talk to us about that self-discovery. I don't think that is a common message in the sales world.
Yeah, it was one of the first things that I ever, and it's heard, and it was the first sales book I ever read. So I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Jeffrey Gitomer, one of the sales goats, he wrote a book called The Sales Bible. And he says very blatantly in that book, people love to buy, but they hate to be sold. And what that means to me is we love to spend our money on things that either make us happy or prevent us from being upset, aka solve a problem. And in the role of a sales professional, our job is to help the customer buy, never feel like they're being sold. And that is how successful salespeople get to the levels they do. They focus on helping the customer think through the problems that they have, think through how they want to address them, and then ultimately make the decision that they choose based off of the information that they've been provided. I tell people, stop pitching and start helping. Find a way to help the customer, right? The people that I get the chance to work with, most of them are multi-line insurance agents. They have lots of ways to help the customer, not just one. They may come to you to talk about auto insurance, but they don't know how you could help them with their homeowners, their renter's insurance if they're a renter, life insurance, disability. And so we don't know how we can help them either if we don't go through kind of the four key types of questions, which are circumstance. What are your current circumstances? What's your current situation? What are your obstacles? Right? What are some of the challenges? Why are you shopping? Nobody likes to shop for car insurance. It's a thing that really people probably disdain. And so we have to find out, why are they shopping? And then cut through the myth that price is all that matters, and then get to the impact or consequences of failing to take the right action. And then ultimately help them see what the benefit is of doing business with us. And so it's a very focused and structured process where we're asking, very emotional questions to get people to think about the future. Because insurance is something we never think about today, but we also don't get to go back and change it in the future. I can't fix a claim after I've had it, right? I have to think about the consequences of something happening, and we have to paint vivid pictures and stories for people to do that. And that comes through questions.
Yeah, Zach, I noticed that you said structured and not scripted. Is that intentional?
It is. I am a big believer in scripting. I'm a big believer in the use of scripts, but as a way to practice. I tell people, and you should practice your script until you know it as well as you know how to breathe. Because if you can have a conversation with somebody and logically think about the next question or the next step in your process without having to invite your own disruptive emotions into the conversation, that's when you know you've got it locked in and you've got it figured out. But that comes through hours and hours of repetition and practice. And repetition is one of the key ingredients to successful training in any industry, in any endeavor, whether it's health and fitness or it's insurance sales or it's B2B sales. Repetition is how we get better. And I think that's a common misnomer and why it's one of the core ingredients that I talk about with successful training.
Yeah. All right. We have to go there then, because it's right in the name of your company, Ignite Agency Training. Let's talk about training. A lot of people think, and I'm so excited for you to call this out, a lot of people think that salesmen are born, or, they just have the right personality, or someone's a good salesman and someone is not, as if it's a core part of our identity. Clearly, you believe and you know that this can be trained. What is it about training? Is this a skill set that we learn? What does that look like?
Yeah, it absolutely is a skill set that can be developed. When people ask me what it takes to be successful in sales, and it doesn't matter the product you're selling, it doesn't matter the industry, I really say there's only a few things. You have to enjoy people. You have to be a communicator. You have to enjoy being around people for the most part. But after that, I really want somebody that is willing to work hard, because it's not easy. If it were easy, everybody would do it. That's why sales professionals are paid as well as they are, that are really good. So you have to be willing to work hard. You have to be willing to do things that others aren't. And that means stretching outside your comfort zone, staying late, working weekends, holidays sometimes, to outperform those around you. And you have to be coachable. And if you have those three characteristics, I can give you the skills to be successful if you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to do the four things that I believe are required to call something training. But it starts with those three core attributes. You've got to like people, and you've got to be willing to be in conversations with people. You don't have to be an overly great communicator. We can teach that, but you got to enjoy being around people. You've got to be willing to work hard, and you got to be coachable. And then we can layer the skills in with the four key ingredients to successful training.
Yeah, Zach, I want to go here with you, because you and I were talking about it off air before we hit record together, and that is personality types, extroverts, introverts. Yeah. Too many people think that you have to be extroverted, and you clearly laid it out for us right there, that you have to like people, you have to like being in conversation, but how do you work through that for people who may have that limiting factor or limiting belief of, well, I'm an extrovert, Zach, I'm not going to have the energy, like that's draining for me. How do you navigate that with those people?
Yeah, I think it's finding the reason why you want to be in sales in the first place. And it's not for everybody. Some of the best salespeople that I've ever had the chance to work with are naturally introverted people. But at their core, they want to help other people. So they get past that fear of being in those types of conversations by focusing on what they do enjoy, which is helping people, and they get energy out of helping people. Now, if I sat a naturally introverted person in a sales chair and had them read an old school, overly salesy script for 8 hours a day, and the whole goal behind that script was to do nothing more than to sell products to people, whether it was the right fit or not, but we have quotas to hit, we have targets to hit, that's going to drain that person's energy. That's going to drain an extrovert's energy. But that is an absolute recipe for burnout and disaster for an introvert. But if I can get a naturally introverted person into a role where they are feeling empowered and like they're making a difference in helping the person on the other end of the phone, that fear or the anxiety of being in that type of environment naturally goes away, because it's trumped by the joy of seeing the smile, or hearing the excitement, or the relief in the other end of the phone when the person has their problem solved. And so I think it all comes back to the type of role that we're trying to put them in from a sales perspective, and then building on those skills. And as confidence grows, we stretch, we get outside of the comfort zone into the learning zone, and then we get into kind of the strength zone, and that's where I found success. And I believe, some of the best salespeople are naturally introverted. And I shared with you, I'm an extrovert in some ways and an introvert in a lot of ways, and it just depends on the environment and in what I'm doing in that moment.
Yeah, I really appreciate those insights. I'm so excited for you to cross this bridge for us, because what I appreciate about your training style and everything I've read about your business is it's actually not merely about information or education. It is about that action. Talk to us about what that training actually looks like. What's the process look like? How do you, as someone who's leading that ship, ensure that people actually take action with the stuff that you're providing them with?
Yeah, it's a great question. In it goes back to the 4 key ingredients I've mentioned a couple times. Most people believe that training is all about content. And so I can listen to a podcast like this, or I can watch a video on YouTube, or I can subscribe to Ignite Agency Training and I can watch the videos there, and I can read a book, and I'm going to just get better through osmosis. That's not how we get better. There is a common myth out there that knowledge is power. Knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. And if we don't ever use the information, we can't say that we've trained. We might have learned, but we haven't trained. Training is something that is intended to change behavior, and it is intentional, and it changes an outcome. And so training isn't just good content. It's not watching content or acting with content. It requires the other 3 key ingredients. And we try to build that into the system as much as we possibly can. But those ingredients are repetition. I talked about that earlier. The average human needs around 7 to 11 interactions or repetitions with a piece of information before they ever are at a level of confidence to implement it consistently. And even once we do, a lot of times we need to be reminded more than we need to be instructed, because it's a lot like working out. I could build my muscles to be the strongest they've ever been, but if I stop working them out in the same vigor that I had before, they're going to atrophy over time. Even if I still work out, if I change the way that I work out, the muscles are going to change. And our sales conversations change over time without repetition. And then the third ingredient is practice. Salespeople, they hate role playing. They hate role playing because most people do it the wrong way. Role playing shouldn't be designed to be the entire conversation every single time we role play. When you think back to playing sports or playing a musical instrument or being a performer in the choir, whatever it was that you did where you were performing, you didn't get better playing the game. You got better doing drills, and you got better scrimmaging. And that is how we get better as well. Role play should be short. It should be one small aspect of the conversation that we're trying to improve, and it should be multiple repetitions of that. Just like when I go to the gym. The analogy I use is I could go to the gym every day and I could work out and do 1 rep on every machine in the gym. But can I say I'm going to get better faster doing that? No, I'm going to get better by practicing the same skills multiple times in short, succinct sessions, day after day after day. So repetition and practice. And then last is accountability, which in the business world is another one of those buzzwords that gets a lot of negativity around it. And I believe personally that accountability is ultimately about personal ownership over the opportunity that you've been provided. And this is what I tell people about accountability. If you work for a leader that has provided you with clarity about your role, so what is the role that you serve in the business? They've provided you with clear goals, so you know what your goals are and how you are serving the business. And then you know what is expected of you from an activity standpoint. So in sales, we call it leading indicators and lagging indicators. If you know what those 3 things are, and your goals and your expectations are realistic, and you're failing to hold up to your end of the bargain, you either have a skill or a will issue. And we need to fix that. We need to hold you accountable because you're not serving the role that the business has hired you to do. But if you're doing those things consistently, we should never get into that conversation. And that's the goal, is to identify, do I have a skill issue or do I have a will issue as a leader? And then from there, we focus on fixing the skill issue, and we coach up or coach out on the will issue, because those are really hard to change. But we have to be willing to do what's required to call it training.
Oof, Zach, I'll tell you what, you are living up to the expectation that I set at the top of this episode about that bias to action. I've never heard that skill versus will. Gosh, listeners, I hope none of you have a will issue. I hope that it comes down to that skill, and we can plug a lot of those gaps here, because as Zach said, content can be the catalyst. It can be that spark that makes you go deeper, but you have to practice these things. And that only comes from having that will and tying it. Zach, I love the fact that you bake accountability into this, because it's so important. Actually, I want to go a little bit deeper when it comes to reps and consistency. It's something that you and I have both preached and hammered home quite a few times in our conversation today. I think about it within terms of podcasting. Whenever people ask me, oh, I want to start a podcast, what's your best advice? I always tell them the same thing, Zach. I say, don't start unless you're willing to hit episode 100. If you're going to do it for less than 100 episodes, save yourself the time. So few shows in the history of humanity have made it, so to speak, in less than 100 episodes. You have to be willing to go there regardless of results. And I think about all the people, beginning stage entrepreneurs who try sales. That term drives me crazy, Zach, of try. But I've heard people who say, yeah, I tried to sell my products or services to people and they didn't buy. And I think, did you follow up with them? Talk to us about that back-end support, the follow-ups, the reps, the touch points. You talked about frequency. We've all heard that number of, you have to get in front of someone 7 times for them to make a purchasing decision. How do you navigate that? What's embedded in your approach to frequency and follow-ups and supporting it so we actually get those results?
Yeah, I believe wholeheartedly that prospecting and follow-up is what separates great salespeople from average salespeople. And I'm gonna tell you a funny story. One of my former agents, one of my closest friends, is an insurance agent. He owns 3 agencies, and we used to have workshops where we would do role plays, and these were the longer form. We actually had a kind of a competition. And they had to come in and perform our point of sale conversations. So somebody's requesting information on auto insurance. The goal is to have a needs-based, value-driven conversation, identify opportunities for other conversations about other needs, and ultimately, get the customer to make a decision to help us help them. And so this person that was role-playing had an excellent conversation. Absolutely killed it. And so we went through and we gave him all of this feedback on some things he could improve and how well he did. And this agent sat his pen down and he knew intimately about the activity level of the salesperson because the agent he worked for was one of his closest friends. In the analogy he used, he said, that was one of the best conversations I've ever heard. But the downside is you don't talk to enough people to make it relevant, because that kind of conversation is going to have a real impact on people. But it's kind of like being the best singer in the world, but only singing in the shower. Does it count if nobody ever hears it? And what he was getting at was this person was executing the conversation at an amazingly high level, but wasn't doing the work that it required to get in front of the right number of people to ultimately achieve the goals that had been set for him or that he had set for himself. And so you could be the best salesperson ever, but if you do not have a systematic approach to nurturing and following up with your leads, then you're going to fail. And if you do not have a compelling reason for the customer to stay engaged with you, then you're going to fail, right? I teach people all the time, you should never use the words just checking in or just following up in your follow-up, because that screams salesperson, that screams desperation. Find something that leads into the value of what you talked about the first time. Find something that you can give of value in that next step, in that next text message or email. What are you going to do to continue to nurture the relationship and deepen the relationship, and do it at enough of a frequency where you stay top of mind? And then most importantly, when you do get some kind of commitment, making sure that you are locking that next step up and getting a specific date, a specific time. A lot of salespeople out there leave their success up to chance. When a customer tells you, call me next week, call me next month, call me after the holidays, there's no firm commitment to that. I don't know about you, but when I go to the dentist, they don't say, see you in 6 months. They have a locked in appointment with a date and a time, and then they nurture me throughout the process to make sure that I show back up for that appointment. And we have to do the same thing in sales. Prospecting is it is the ultimate key to success in the sales world, I believe personally.
Gosh, Zach, you just made me realize for the first time ever, how did dentists truly become the perfect example of that concept? Because you're right, that is the only service that I can think of that on your way out, gosh, they've even built it into their workflow. You cannot walk out of the office without first seeing the lady that's going to set that next appointment. It's such a tangible example that too few businesses and way beyond that, too few industries really embrace. So I love that advice. Zach, as expected, you have been a wealth of knowledge, so many valuable insights, and you've certainly called all of us out. Just following up, immediately going to scratch that. I love the fact that that was a direct thing that you told us not to ever do again. So super valuable insights there. But I'm excited to ask you this last question. I ask it at the end of every episode, and I want you to put your entrepreneurial hat on, not just your sales subject matter hat on, because you are one of us, and that is, what's your best piece of advice? Knowing all the things that you know and that you've experienced, and also growing a business of your own along the way, what's that one piece of advice that you have for our listeners, regardless of where they are in their business growth journeys?
I love this question, and there's so many things that come to mind, but it's something that I try to remind myself every day and remind the entrepreneurs that trust me to help them grow and develop their businesses too. It's focus on the important and not just the urgent. See, as a business owner, it's very easy to get comfortable working on the urgent items that maybe we enjoy doing, the things that we're naturally drawn to, the things that have to get done, but they're maybe more tedious. If you're not a natural salesperson, you might spend a lot of time on admin to avoid the urgent or the important task of sales. So we get bogged down in the urgent things, the fires we need to put out, and we avoid the important things. What are the important tasks? What are the top 2 or 3 important non-negotiable tasks that have to happen every day to move your business forward? And I have had this practice for a number of years now, because I'm the same as everybody else, where I will fall into the things that I enjoy doing. And they're urgent, they're going to help me move forward, but they're not the most important tasks. I write down those 2 to 3 things every day. What are the 2 or 3 things that I have to do today that are actually going to move the business forward? Customer service, all of the things that come at us every day, those absolutely have to get done, but they're not necessarily going to move us forward. So focus on the important and not the urgent.
Yes, I love that. There's that bias to action from start to finish, Zach. I'm so appreciative of the way that you show up and all the great stuff that you put into the world. Like I said, I feel inspired seeing the work that you're doing, and especially having a chance to talk with you today. So for listeners who want to go deeper into all the great work that you're putting into the world, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, they can find me on social media. It is at Zach Sabin on Instagram. Follow me on Facebook, on TikTok, on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect there. And I am putting out content pretty regularly on YouTube. So weekly full videos and shorts almost every single day from different topics all over the map, from personal development to entrepreneurial focus to sales. My goal is to help as many people as I possibly can, whether it's just getting 1% better every day in not being an entrepreneur, or to those business owners out there that are needing some help and some guidance. And I'd love to connect on social and drop me a message and let's connect.
Yes, listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find Zach in all of those places down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode, as well as his business website is igniteagencytraining.com. You don't have to remember any of these things. Just click right on through from the show notes down below. Otherwise, Zach, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.